relief? Is it anger?
It is a relief. No, I don't have ever any anger toward the United States, because look, there are good and bad people everywhere. And what happened to me is very sad, but I have a lot of good Americans, which are dearly friends of mine, and I still believe that both countries should be friends. But what happened to me definitely shows that America is losing its justice system. It actually has been lost. Not just for me as a Russian, but for an average American too. I am just, even worse with me, let me put it this way.
After such an experience, would you have any hesitation in going back to the US?
Well, in fact, I cannot. They banned me from returning back. I guess because the peace-building activities that I was performing without registration is such a bad crime, I'm being sarcastic here, that I can't go back. Well, neither I want to for a while, because unfortunately, I should say that in the United States, you shall be very worried.
It's hard to say the words, but perhaps an astonishing last 24 hours for you, the emotions, the gamut that you've run through. Can you tell us about the timeline when you found out that you were finally getting released? How far behind, when you actually left the prison in Tallahassee to go to Miami, did you know you're actually going to be at liberty?
Well, absolutely not, because look, this is generally when you are transported from one institution to another, or like deported in my situation, they never tell you anything. Meaning, so they picked me up basically early morning, it was 5 minutes before 6, and they just said, you go. And then I went through the back gate because they were journalists, I don't know what was going on. They picked me up with 2 cars, ICE people, the immigration department. They brought me to some holding facility, kept me there for 4 hours with no explanation what was going on, and then drove me to the airport, flew me to Miami, and then again in Miami there all these armed guys met me at the airport and brought me to some basement and kept me there for another 4 hours without saying what's going on. But then finally, when I was so relieved, because I saw the car with the agents were finally driving me to the airplane, and I saw the little tail and the Russian flag, and I figured out that's Aeroflot, and I figured out it's going to be my flight.
It was only then you fully realized.
Yeah. And no, that I haven't, because everything that happened to me was like Alice in Wonderland. It has been so crazy, has been so unpredictable, that I expected anything happening with me until my plane actually landed here in Russia. And now I still have some, weird sense. I don't know if it's real or it's just a dream.
You spent months in solitary confinement. That was before the actual sentencing. It must have taken a toll on you, I can't imagine, mentally, physically. Can you put that into words, that experience?
I still remember each day. I've spent 117 days on solitary confinement, and that was probably the most terrifying experience that I've ever had in my life, because it's even in the Bible, human being is not supposed to be alone. It's very difficult when you have this little cell, very cold, just concrete and iron, and you stay there and you're only allowed to go outside to make a phone call to your family in the middle of the night, from 1 to 3 a.m. in the morning. Later I learned that by the United Nations, this is considered to be torture, because it is a torture. It's not normal to keep a person. Think about if you just even keep your pet locked in a cage for so long. Don't you feel sorry? How much more for a human being? That's what happened to me. I still don't understand why it was necessary.
Why do you think it was?
Well, I don't know. I guess they were trying to, break my will, but for what? I didn't have any secrets. I was just a student, believing in peace building between the 2 countries. And in fact, I ended up pleading for exactly that. So I had no money in my case. I have no co-conspirators in my conspiracy, so I conspired with myself. I have no illegal activities, and I have no victims. The only crime I made was not to register. Here's my question. Is it really normal to keep a person for 4 months on solitary confinement and then 18 months in prison for not filing a piece of paper? This law does not have a form for registration. So I think it's just a little too much.
You said that perhaps the reason for solitary confinement was that they wanted to break your will. During that time, were you still being questioned about your activities?
Oh yeah, all the time.
How often would that happen?
Well, approximately once a week, they would take me from the cell. They would feed me some food. There was the only time when I saw actually normal food, and they would ask me questions. But again, I knew nothing. So what could I give? And so the whole thing of these long interviews were just so American public believes that there is something important going on, which it wasn't.
Could you have visitors at that time?
Yeah, occasionally, I was allowed to have 2 30-minute visits per week. Was it?
That was all. You mentioned, we've been speaking on the program for quite some time about your case, as I'm sure you know.
Actually, I don't.
You don't? You wouldn't have seen that?
Because I didn't see any news.
You did see did you see some of the US media's coverage of your case during that time?
I did not.
So you didn't have the opportunity to see what was being spoken about you with other prisoners around you, perhaps, and other guards as well?
Well, I know very little. And especially on early stages of my experience, I'd say, it was a blessing. Because I just didn't know what's going on.
You're completely in the dark.
I saw, and my attorneys, I think, made a very smart decision. They just did not let me to see all these bad reports about me, all these lies that the government later admitted. They said, well, we misread the messages, or well, there was no sexual power. But that created the whole story. So how about me? How am I supposed to live now? But nobody cares. So, but I didn't see that. But then when the people from Russian embassy would come, they would sometimes bring me this, reports, kind of overview. This is how I've learned that, Russians care about me. And that's what kept me strong through these days in solitary confinement.
Just on that point, some of the outpouring of support has been quite extraordinary. The cards, the amount of love, really, that you've got from the Russian public.
It was amazing. I remember the winter was pretty cold, and so my concrete little cell was so cold. But people would write me congratulations, like with the New Year. My birthday was around the same time. And, I was on solitary, but I didn't have enough time because I had so many letters to respond to. And I responded to every single one. That what kept me busy. Because I felt responsible, because my grandparents taught me that if you get a letter, you have to respond in 3 days. So I had a timeline. It saved me mentally.
Just going back to some of the coverage of you, what was repeatedly fired at you was that you were a spy, a foreign spy. Why did you plead guilty to being a foreign agent?
Because I've never been a spy, and have never been charged with any espionage charges. I mean, it's no more than Hollywood picture that, unfortunately, which is like so sad for me, because the United States says that there is all this gender equality going on. But look, if I were not the way I look like, if I were not a woman, there would be no sex story. This is so sad, because this is sexism, absolutely. And they didn't want to admit it. The whole case became so public in media exactly because of the way I look like. It's very sad. You can't judge a person just by appearance. You have to actually look to the essence. I did plea to be a foreign agent because, look, think about this for a while. So I am on solitary confinement, in jail, facing 15 years, knowing that statistically Americans plea in more than 90% of cases.
Sure.
Why do they do that? Because if you go to trial, you're going to lose that trial. Especially me, a Russian, on trial in Washington, D.C., in the middle of anti-Russian hysteria, I would have gotten all 15 years. So my choice was obvious.
There was no real decision on that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely not.
Just picking up about that, and you smiled when you said it, that the Russian foreign ministry was the very few sources of information that you got. Can you expand on what you were told at that stage, and did that help you?
Yes, it did. It did. The sense of the life outside and the responsibility that I had to stay strong for my people, that what kept me. I knew that if I give up, what will happen with my family? How would they see it? They suffer so much. How would that be for my mother and father to get back a daughter who is not well? So I kept all my strength for my people because I knew that I've learned that the whole country is looking what I'm doing. And that's what kept me strong. I just couldn't give up. If I give up, then what? No, I couldn't.
And it was perhaps a barometer of similar cases of other Russians, other nationalities as well in the US, keeping a very close eye on your case. Were you aware of that you were almost at the forefront of this battle?
Well, not really. As you know, I didn't get that much news, so I didn't know. But look, I'll be honest with you. If you're today a Russian in the United States, I would be very worried because you just never know. Like, there was no substance, there was no reason to bring me and arrest me and give me time, especially give me time. What this cruelty was for, I just don't understand that. So I would be worried.
You're an advocate for gun rights here in Russia. It's quite it's quite an unusual issue here in Russia. It doesn't have widespread support with the people or the government. Why was that something you feel or do feel so strongly about?
It goes back to my childhood, but you know what I would notice here is that I was very surprised that next day after I was arrested, I saw people, Russian diplomats from Russian embassy, who came to me and they supported me from day one. And look, I was not a pro-governmental activist, not at all, but they supported me and they fought for me every single day because I'm a Russian citizen. And you know, I prefer to judge a country or a person by actions. And I think my country did everything to protect me, and does today. And I'm very proud to be Russian.
Will you continue with gun rights now that you're back?
Absolutely, yes. And also, I will continue, and I will still believe that there is peace possible between the United States and Russia, because it shall be based on civil diplomacy, not on the relationships of the governments. And I do believe they are wonderful Americans. I have wonderful attorneys. I have great friends who have supported me through all this time. One of my friends, he's now in Moscow, James Bamford, he has been talking to me every single night when I was on solitary confinement. He's an American. I can't say America is bad, but it's definitely lost its justice system.
You're back to Moscow, you're back to your home country, you've been seeing your family, your friends. There will be more, of course, in Barnaul, in Siberia, of course, when you eventually get to travel there. What is next for you? What would you? It's been a whirlwind 24 hours, but I'm sure you've had time to think about what you would perhaps like to do now.
I don't know. However, here's what I would say. It's not the fame I wanted. I didn't ask for it. But since now I have, I guess, a world recognition, I feel obligated, I feel responsible to fight for those who are humiliated, who are unjustly accused, who are today, well, forgotten here in Russia and especially there in the United States. And I will be talking about the conditions of my imprisonment because the country should be measured on how it treats its prisoners. They treat their prisoners very bad, much worse me. But you know, if I never talk about this, it means I betrayed all these girls who asked me to be their voice, all these souls in prison who had never been heard. Many of them were unjustly accused. I feel obligated to talk about this. I'm just going to tell the truth, the way how it is.
Maria, we really appreciate you coming in, taking some of your time after just arriving a number of hours ago in Moscow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, and every luck in the future, whatever you decide to do.
Thank you very much.
Maria Butina, gun rights activist back in Russia. Okay, we are going to have a look at some more world news this hour. One quite big story we're following as well. The US Justice Department has reportedly triggered a criminal inquiry into the origin of the Mueller investigation.